how to do dumbbell rows correctly so that you feel very strong back engagement, improve your posture and your shoulder health. That's what we're going to cover in this video. Now, dumbbell rows might look simple enough, but there's a million ways to screw this up because it's actually a very technical lift. So in this video, I will do a detailed tutorial. I'll run through common mistakes and I'll leave you with some quick tips so that you can clean up your form and master this movement to build a bigger, stronger back. You know the motto, smarter training, superior results. Let's go. Starting with the setup, the first thing we want to do is square our torso to the ground with a nice rib cage stacked over pelvis and no twist in the spine. So the positioning of our legs is key. We want one knee down with the foot overhanging the end of the bench, and we want to place the other foot in line with that knee. So if you can see straight down the barrel there, we want the midfoot to be in line with that knee. Now, as for width, we want the knees shoulder width, okay? So notice they are both outside the line of the hips, roughly in line with my shoulders. From here, it's just a hip hinge to square the torso to the ground, okay? So hands on hips to get familiar with this movement. Think about spilling water out of the front of a bucket and then place the arm down. So notice I'm loading the hips. I'm not just leaning forward, otherwise I'm going to have too much weight through that down arm. Okay, so once you're positioned, hip hinge, arm down like so. The next step before picking the dumbbell up is to stabilize through the 3 points of contact. Okay, so most people are going to have their weight too much shifted to the side where the knee is on the bench. Okay, and we actually want balanced tension through our pelvis. So try to position your hips between your knees. And that means you need to shift some weight to that outside foot so that your tension is balanced. That's how you stabilize equally through both sides of the hips like so. And then for the arm, we want to think about screwing that arm into the ground, okay? So a bit of an outward turn, elbow pip forward, and that way we have now stabilized that shoulder. Now we're well positioned to pick up that dumbbell. So grip strong and reach the arm long, okay? We want to embed that bar deep in the palm of the hand so that we fully activate all of those gripping muscles and irradiate tension through to the shoulder so that that shoulder is nice and stable. And then we can lift up and then from here, reach the arm long so that the shoulder blade is protracted and wrapped around the rib cage and we have those target muscles fully stretched. So that is position A, and from here we can now initiate the pull toward position B. So the goal is to synchronize pulling the shoulder and the elbow back. A couple of helpful cues to do this well. One is to think about driving the elbow to the wall behind you to ensure that we get that shoulder depressed away from the ear and we get strong lat engagement. The other cue is to think about pulling your shoulder toward the midline of the spine so that we get shoulder blade retraction. That is the goal, okay? So we're trying to synchronize that movement together, and then we finish in position B. So in position B, my upper arm is level with my torso. There is space between my elbow and my body. My shoulder is depressed away from my ear, and my shoulder blade is drawn toward the midline of my spine. From here to transition back to position A, I'm just going to reach the arm long, okay? I like thinking about driving that arm away from my back to stretch those target muscles. Breathing is key to do this exercise well because we need to activate the core and stabilize the torso so that we're only moving through the arm and the shoulder. So when you're set up, we want to take a deep breath in through the nose. Then we're going to exhale as we pull, inhale as we reach. Let's put that together now. I'll do a real-time demo and we'll talk about tempo. Okay, hopefully you saw all those steps put together there. You should have seen that my torso was square, it didn't compensate, and I got full range of motion through the arm. You'll notice as well, tempo is something that you can play with, but I'm a big fan when doing any row of pausing in the end range for a split second. It proves that you own the weight, and it ensures that you actually achieve that elbow extension and shoulder blade retraction. That is key to fully shorten those target muscles so you get strong back engagement. Now we've gone through that real-time demo, let's talk about the common mistakes. First common mistake, not having your torso square to the ground. So this could be because you have just looked at the dumbbell and you've rounded your back like so, or you're not conscious that this needs to be a hip hinge, okay? The fix is you need to learn how to hip hinge, right? Tilt the pelvis forward so that your spine is in a neutral position. The other mistake here is going to be being too narrow of a stance and your pelvis is rotated, okay? So your spine's on a bit of a twist. So going back to that very first beginning of the video, we've got to get the setup right so the torso is square to the ground. The second common mistake is going to be what I would call over pulling and under retracting. So if you look at my shoulder, you'll see it's not really moving. The elbow's coming beyond the midline of the torso and the shoulder is kind of dumping forward, hiking a bit up to the ear. Very, very common this. So this is where you're moving through the elbow, but there's nothing happening at the shoulder blade. So if that's happening, we need to make sure we think about pulling the shoulder back toward the midline of the spine, okay? And we're getting that shoulder blade retraction. Now, this requires good stability and a lot of body control. So if you struggle with that action, just go with the arm like so, straight elbow, and practice pulling the shoulder back toward the midline of the spine. Okay? We've got to master that movement in isolation before we can comfortably and confidently integrate it into our dumbbell row. The next common mistake is going to be a classic, okay? Back rotating, right? Pushing strongly through the down arm, and notice how the chest is now not square to the ground, okay? We're lifting and we're basically twisting through the thoracic spine. This usually happens if the weight is too heavy. It's also just a compensatory movement if we're not aware that we need to keep that nice square torso and chest square to the ground. So think about that. Think about your chest staying square to the ground as you move through the arm. And lastly, we have on the return, just straightening the elbow, okay? But the shoulder blade is fixed, okay? And the aim of the game here is to get that arm moving through a full range of motion so that we fully lengthen and shorten the muscles we're trying to target. And so, again, goes back to that cue I like, reach the arm long, or think about reaching the arm away from your back. And that way, you will get that nice lengthening before you pull. Okay, so those are the common mistakes, and now I'll leave you with some quick tips. All right, some quick tips to wrap this video up. Control the tempo, okay? So a slight pause in that shortened position and a slow active reach on the return back down to the ground. That way you're gonna work those muscles through a full range of motion, get the best results from this exercise. Number 2, use an appropriate weight, okay? Ego's not gonna do you any favors with this one. Most people are loading too heavy, hence all the compensatory movement, moving the spine, but not doing a good job of retracting that shoulder blade, which is the aim of the game. In terms of rep ranges, I think moderate to high, play around, sets of 8, sets of 10, sets of 15. The back responds really well there because these are postural muscles. They have good endurance. I think another good tip is to carry some chalk if you can, right? The real stuff or liquid, just because you want to make sure you have a really strong grip. You don't want your grip to be the limiting factor. So If your dumbbells are a bit greasy or you struggle with grip, chalk works wonders. That's the main points, I think. That is enough talking about the dumbbell row, but I hope that was a really valuable video for you. I hope you can integrate what you've learned to get better gains from this exercise. Thanks so much for watching. Please give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you again in the next one.